further ado, our guest speaker, Gordy Mao, is the Director of SFI Program Participant Relations. He engages the SFI community to leverage the work of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative implementation committees across the US and Canada. He focuses on demonstrating the value of this work for SFI program participants. His career in forest certification began in 2004 and includes experience on both sides of the border. He led certification efforts that implemented chain of custody, fiber sourcing, and forest management certifications at Stora Enso, NewPage, and Verso. Gordy has served on 11 different SFI implementation committees throughout the Great Lakes region, the US East Coast, and Southeast. Gordy is a graduate of Michigan. Technological University's School of Forest Resources and Environmental Science. So Gordy, we're so glad to have you tonight to let us know about SFI. I wanted to let people know before Gordy gets going that our next session is June 29th, and we're going to talk about endangered and threatened species, how loggers can help. So Gordy, without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you'd like to share yours, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ignis. I appreciate that. So let me see, make sure you guys can see. Anybody, can you guys see my screen?
We can see your screen as in, yes, we can see your screen and you're getting it to exactly where it needs to go, right like that. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys for the next, I guess, 45 minutes to an hour here. And I'm even more glad that logging jokes are okay for this presentation. So I'm sure I can create some as we go. Again, thank you for the great, the introduction and yeah, Michigan, we just like to say Michigan Tech University because technological is kind of a hard word to say. So in the future, you could just say Michigan Tech because anyway, nonetheless, so today I'm going to talk to you guys about certification, SFI, and specifically about logger training, more specifically of why logger training is important and a part of SFI certification. So with that, I'll start off by saying this kind of training, heck, a year or two ago was all done in person. I certainly be the first to admit I certainly miss those kind of events. But as we've had to sort of switch around and maybe create sort of different avenues or different ways to get training, a lot of home offices or online webinars have become standard. And so while I like to joke about sort of the pandemic with some of my slides, but the reason I have some of my hunting pictures is that I spent most of COVID, again, hopefully hopefully we're on our way sort of out of it now, but I spent more time than my wife thought possible spending quarantine time hunting. And so that's why I wanted to give an overview of sort of the fun COVID sort of thoughts that I had. But ultimately, I wish we could be doing this sort of in person, as it's fun, and I miss sort of that personal connection with loggers and folks like you guys on the call or on the webinar. So Agnes gave a great overview of me. I'll just add to that a lot of years in forest certification that includes logging, and in my next slide I'll sort of talk about my very short logging career and several program participants, Stora Enso, Verso. Stora Enso, I did certification all over the world at that time, and Verso is certainly a familiar name, I think, in the Maryland, the old Luke Mill, and NewPage as well. So really quick, kind of a let's talk logging joke for a second, which is probably how to sum up my logging career, and then I'll talk about my quick forestry career before I got into forest certification as a little background as to who in the world am I. So first, upper left-hand corner, first day on the job. This is a Wisconsin picture, Timbercat 822. It wasn't quite wintertime, and I decided to plant the machine. Was fired the next day, and I thought I better do something different. And went to school at Michigan Tech University for forestry. Not really learning my lesson that it needs to get really cold before you. And again, I'm from the UP of Michigan now up in Wisconsin. That's where I'm currently sitting. My first little jaunt at a forester for a land company up in the UP. I thought, again, I could take my 2012 Ford F-150 company truck across the ice, and I've learned quickly that I wouldn't say I was planting the pickup truck, but again, trying to make the pickup truck a fish. So I decided at that point I better do, logging wasn't right. Forestry wasn't maybe the best at the company assets. So I decided maybe I'll take a crack at forest certification. If I have a third slide and there's something crazy about forest certification, maybe I'll take a crack at comedian. I'm not sure yet, but anyway, that's those are the that's my quick background on logging and some forestry. Kind of a funny thought. Just an FYI, if you don't have at least 12 inches of ice, don't drive on it. I learned that, of course, in the bottom right-hand picture, the hard way. So next, I would like to ask you guys a poll question, and Agnes, I don't know if you can help me sort of, there it is. So the, actually, is there a second question? You want to ask the second question first? There you go. That's okay. Actually, that's okay. That's the second, that's actually the second question. That's right. I'm not worried about it. Yeah, that's perfect. That's the exact question I want. So if you're attending this via Zoom, maybe perhaps in your cell phone, you can see the question that that's up here. I have kind of an overview question of why am I here, and what brought you to attend today's training session. So if you can, choices are, you were told I need to know, I need to be trained. Not really sure, or potentially a funny answer. Let a few folks take this question. Really good, really good. And I can, good. I'll stop that right now and hopefully share the results. Good. Do you guys see the results? Good. So most of you are attending here today probably to get SFI credit hours. I guess over half, or a half of you guys need to be trained. Some of you guys were told to be here, and at least one doesn't know why they're here today, but that's okay. Probably just to listen to me, and I get it. So that's really good. Next slide. So let's get into just really quick, starting really high, forest certification, just on a really high level. Certainly today you're going to hear about SFI or SFI certification, but there's other certifications as well. Maybe driving down the road, you've seen some of these signs or have heard of these. The top right-hand side certification, American Tree Farm for private forest landowners, PEFC, which stands for the program for the endorsement of forest certification systems. That's sort of an endorsement certification system that SFI and Tree Farm are both endorsed for, as well as 84 other certification systems around the world. And then the bottom right-hand one, FSC certification. Today, though, we're going to talk 100% exclusively on SFI. So just to a high level, we'll slowly dig down into why sort of logger training, but I think in order to do so, I sort of need to give a quick background on what in the world is SFI, and because SFI has really sort of changed from initially a standards certification, or really actually at one time a part of AFNPA, or the American Forest and Product Association. And today we're an independent sustainability group that focuses on forest-focused collaborations. And SFI is made up of really 4 parts. The standards, which again, I'll probably focus most of my time again talking about the standards. That's what the mills, that's the part that requires logger training. But in addition to the standards, SFI is also focused on conservation or forestry research that we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about that and some logging related work items that are going on in the conservation work. Education. A couple years ago, SFI acquired Project Learning Tree, which is an environmental education group that teaches, I guess, K through 12 about trees and sustainability, as well as community, and that is really our outreach and focus groups that, again, I'll mention more in my next slides. But like really, I guess, all certification systems, SFI is governed by a board of directors made up of 3 parts: economic, environmental, and social. Economic is really different companies that are rotating, that are certified to SFI certification, as well as a logger in the economic sort of chamber. Today, that person is Jamie Urogwin from the state of Oregon, and he's the president, maybe he's the chair. I guess he's not the executive director. He's the president of the Associated Oregon Loggers Association, or AOL. Environmental chamber that SFI has, made up of the organizations you see on the screen, as well as sort of the social chamber. All 3 of those really are the sort of the governing board of SFI that makes overall decisions on the path of SFI. SFI is focused on a vision that is focused on our vision that wants a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forest, a mission that will advance sustainability through forest-focused collaborations. Though, even though I'm talking about sort of SFI, this might be a little bit choppy, but I'm going to try it anyway. And we've kind of have a relatively new video that'll sort of talk about the overview of SFI. And again, I apologize if it's a little choppy. It was a little choppy in sort of the pre thing that we just did, but I still think it's important enough to try and show you. It's only about a minute long.
When it comes to making better choices for the planet, the time to act is now. The future we all share depends on our commitment to growing solutions that benefit both people and planet. Certification from the Sustainable Forestry Initiative is a mark of that commitment. Choosing SFI certified products and packaging means choosing high sustainability standards, research-driven conservation, sustainable community development, and environmental education. We support sustainable forestry to protect water resources, mitigate climate change, and help our communities adapt. We envision a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests. These forests provide habitat for at-risk species, jobs for human communities, and beautiful places where all people can relax, exercise, learn, and grow. SFI is the mark that lets you know we're making better choices for the planet and its people.
Good. Hopefully that worked. If it did, if it didn't, well, too bad. Oh, good. I get to start over. I'm just kidding. I won't start over. I get to where we were. Awesome. Now, to dive into sort of the four pieces of SFI, at least briefly. Again, we'll talk standards probably more in depth. We'll start off with our certification standards. And to start off with our certification and our standards, the first look is really the growth of SFI certified land in North America in the last 20 years. And you can see really, I guess, all the certifications that are applicable to North America, SFI being the green line, FSC, and CSA, which stands for the Canadian Standards Association, again, only applicable in Canada. And then, of course, the ATF being the American Tree Farm System. But tremendous growth of the SFI certification now over, I think when I joined SFI maybe 3 years ago, we were at 250 million acres. The talk of SFI was a quarter billion, and just in the last, the last 3 or 4 years, we've almost doubled in size of certified acres certified to SFI. And we'll talk about a little bit of why that growth is happening within SFI. Just to mention sort of at least the state lands that are certified to SFI and ones that are pending or coming or going to be certified to SFI. You see Maryland on the screen as well as land base that is certified to SFI, Pennsylvania, Virginia, in talks with West Virginia, North Carolina for more Atlantic-based lands. We're constantly negotiating with them, or not negotiating, but in talks with the state agencies as well as other companies as well about getting their lands certified to SFI. But SFI isn't just about forest management certification. We have really 3 certification standards. 2 of them will be sort of relevant to loggers and logger training. Again, the one I've just kind of highlighted was the SFI Forest Management Standard. That's certifying really the forest or the land base. Then there's the SFI Fiber Sourcing Standard. That's a certification standard that certifies the procurement system of a mill. And both forest management and SFI fiber sourcing require logger training, and that logger training is for the one person that said he didn't know why he was here. This is those 2 requirements of the forest management standard and the fiber sourcing standard are why you're here. Then the other certification system that we have is SFI chain of custody as well, which is really an accounting system or a tracking system of tracking forest products to the end consumer. There will be as a side note, SFI is actively working on a 4th standard, and that's going to be an urban forestry certification standard as well to basically certify urban trees and urban, I guess, parks and really, really small forest, if you can call them that, or woodlots, if you will. And there's been a lot of discussion internally within SFI about that and the need for certification around those trees and parks. Next, kind of our founding sort of principles on forest management and fiber sourcing. We have these overall sort of 13 core principles that we have. Some are very common or very sustainable forestry, healthy forests, protection of water, biodiversity, research, but I wanted to just highlight that in SFI's core principles, this is what we're going to have no matter what. Number 10 being that training and education is sort of a core principle of SFI, and it has been since inception, which was in 1995, and will likely continue to be, not likely, will continue to be for really the future of the organization. So for kind of your part, I guess, in this certification, if it was forest management, what companies are doing is they're buying or acquiring material from an SFI. If you're in Canada, CSA, or if you're buying tree farm certified forest, a logger's cutting that, hauling it to the mill. It's getting processed, and the mill's meeting, well, in this case, a certified forest is getting those trees harvested by a trained logger and meeting really all the other requirements around forest management certification. And then that mill can label their products as SFI certified. Fiber sourcing works basically the exact same way. Instead of having a certified forest, the logger, or you're working on maybe a private forest landowner, and selling that wood to a mill. Again, the procurement, or there's some assurances that those trees and that logging tract has been done in a responsible manner. That gets audited, and then again, the mill can utilize the SFI certified sourcing logo. And again, I'll highlight that a little bit more, because that's, at the end of the day, if you learn nothing else from this presentation, is that loggers are an integral part in the ability for companies to put sustainability marks, in this case SFI, on their product. So when you pick up a notepad, or I just the last week, I put a bunch of 2x4s in my truck, and then I was getting at the checkout counter, and I realized I couldn't afford them, so I was putting them back. And then when I was putting them back, I'm like, oh, there's an SFI stamp. They came from West Fraser, was the company, a Canadian company, and the SFI logo was there. And so when you see the SFI logo out there, know that one of those requirements that has been met, whether it be forest management or fiber sourcing certification, is that the training of loggers had to occur for that logo to be in use. Period. End of story. And so, and I tell that, and people are like, I can't believe it, but that is an integral part, and you'll see it. Well, there's literally thousands and thousands of products that utilize the SFI logo. I'll show you some of those in a little bit. But next, let's do another question, because I kind of like it. And I just gave you guys the answer to this one. So this question, what does logger training have to do with SFI logos? I'm kind of testing you guys. If Agnes, if you could put up the perfect. What does logger training have to do with the SFI logos? There's kind of 4 things. I literally just talked about it. So I'm kind of testing you folks to see how you can do, how you're doing. And if we get this question wrong, I'm going to start all over my presentation. You're going to have to hear from me for another couple hours. So wait, I think I had about 6-7 votes last time, and I'll wait till I get about that many again, and we'll end this. few more people can vote, or are they falling asleep? One of the two. Good. Really good. Well, I got a couple. And I'll end this just so, and then share the results. So everybody got it right. So that means that that I won't go over my time allotted today. But what does logger training have to do with SFI logos? And the answer is really the only answer here of the choices I gave is everything. The company couldn't label products without meeting the logger training requirements. Really good. I'm really surprised that someone didn't do the I'm bored answer, but nonetheless, nice job. Continuing on. Awesome. I mentioned logos. I just had a poll question about SFI logos. These are the three. Actually, the two to the left are the most common logos you will see on products out there. Certified sourcing. That logo is used when SFI fiber sourcing certification standard has been used to for the wood in the product. So again, that's the company has certified the procurement system of the mill. And so the wood in that case likely came from a private forest landowner, non-certified. But the mill itself was certified, and the procurement system is certified so that they help ensure sustainability, logger training on the lands that you all are cutting. And I see that logo probably most common, but the next one over is the chain of custody logo. You'll see this. This was on those 2x4s I couldn't afford anymore. It's the chain of custody logo. When you see that one, this is the middle one. Maybe you can see my mouse. I'm not really sure, or the cursor here. The certified chain of custody. When you see this one, you will know automatically that the wood that came from the product that you see this logo came from an SFI forest management certified, or one of those 370 million acres that SFI has certified across the US and Canada. This one can be a mix of fiber. The one to the right here, a certified chain of custody, can be a logo that has a mixture of really all three fibers in it: wood from the forest, wood from an SFI forest management, as well as recycled. And then the bottom right-hand side is our global logo, so that if a company wants to certify or label products that are going overseas, they're allowed to use that. And we have, I think, 4 companies now using that. Metsa is a paperboard manufacturer, but today we have 2 sawmills that saw up wood and put them into like containers, and they're using a version of this global label. It's like the certified sourcing, but a global label for a customer in Italy that wants certified boards in Italy. So certification has been certainly hot, or is really in demand from the packaging and paper side, but we're increasingly see increased demand for the solid wood products, which means OSB or boards and that sort of material. So to talk a little bit more about the logo used here on SFI, I'll do one more video. And this one also is only a minute long. Did the first video, someone, if anybody's on there, give me a thumbs up if it worked okay. Agnes, it did? I'm getting all thumbs up. Well, that's good. I'll see if I can mess it up this time. Hang on one second.
Don't worry, I already did enough of that.
No, usually that's reserved for me to mess it up. But let me go. Let me go to. I had these all prepared, and then when I go to the, oh, here we go. So let's do this. And oh, that's the video we just saw. Hang on. That's the video I want right there. Sorry. There we go. All right, logo time, video. Popcorn ready? All right, it's only a minute long, so you have to eat it fast. And
when people pick up the SFI logo, they should recognize it as a sign of sustainable forestry. What it means is the paper that it's printed on, or the wood that that label is on, or the cardboard packaging that it's on, comes from a forest that's been managed to high levels of sustainability standards. The harvest levels are sustainable. Trees are replanted once they're harvested. Clean water is emanating from that forest because best practices have been followed for water quality management. There's wildlife habitat. There's the assurance that species at risk are protected. That paper cup may represent habitat for a gopher tortoise or for a red cockaded woodpecker. The company that puts that logo on their product is really driving sustainability outcomes by their procurement practices. So the more consumers recognize that logo and seek it out in the marketplace, the more they drive those companies to support those conservation outcomes. That's really, really important.
so what Paul also said, certainly there's the conservation benefits that you saw. Whoop. Sorry about that. So you certainly saw that Paul's talking about the conservation SFI logo, but I think more appropriate for this crowd, every time you see that logo, you can also think that, you know, a trained logger was behind every single one of them. But with that, I'll go back to the presentation. And continue on. So talk about, you saw, I think you just saw in that video, I don't know if you noticed, there's the first couple were SFI certified sourcing logos, and then there was a chain of custody logo. I was just amazed that every time they touched a sheet of OSB, that was $30–40, which I still can't get over. Anyway, enough about the cost of lumber these days. Our demand, where's our demand going? And it is increasing almost exponentially, because today we're getting over, this slide is a couple years old, which 2018 we were getting 7,000 label approvals a year. Today we're getting 9,000, and I'll tell you that those label approvals aren't, most of the packaging and paper side is done. All the new ones are coming from really the solid wood product industry, southern yellow pine or some of the spruce and the board industry. But we're also seeing a lot of sort of the hardwood market and the veneers and even some of the export stuff now as well, demanding sort of the new label use that, or driving some of the new label use that we're seeing today. Some examples of some products. Again, it's increased, but you saw them on the video as well. But if you're looking for it, I mean, you'd be amazed at how many different products have you know, the SFI certified logo. So when you leave here, and because you listen to me through dinner time and you get Domino's pizza, I want you to, once you finish the Domino's pizza, or what is this, chicken nuggets or something, turn the box upside down when it's empty, and then when you realize the certified logo, and if you're a logger, you say, you know what, that I've helped, you know, put that logo on this product, and certainly be proud of that fact. Okay, that was a lot on standards. I will not be that long on some of the other pieces of SFI, but I do think they're important to mention as well. And the first one is really our conservation. Paul Trynoski, who you just saw in that video, is the chief. Well, he's the head. I don't know what his title is anymore. He's the head of conservation for SFI. Again, they invest money into sort of a lot of different products: forest health, forest operations efficiencies, lots of other stuff, but really trying to prove that forest certification, sustainable forestry, is truly good. And without that, the basis of all of this, I could be in question. And really, it's the conservation group is out there investing. Program participants are investing, as well as SFI Inc.'s own dollars are investing dollars into, proving the benefits of sustainably managed forests, specifically SFI certified forests. That includes fiber sourcing and forest management. Just a quick snapshot of sort of different partners: government, conservation groups, universities, community partners, all working together on our conservation work. Total investment between conservation and our community partnerships that SFI has leveraged totals over $16 million. And I'll just add here that, so why do you care, maybe as a logger, about really any of this? But we also invest money into sort of logging technology. In fact, SFI, or actually myself, will host an SIC webinar on tethered logging, a research project that we funded to show the environmental benefits of tethered logging. It was done in the Pacific Northwest, but certainly has applications in some of the Appalachian, certainly in some of the dang hills I've climbed in West Virginia. There's definitely and actually in Maryland and Pennsylvania as well, I've seen some pretty nice hills. But nonetheless, SFI is, again, and in this case, $20,000 of dollars to invest in to prove that, some of these logging systems are truly, sustainable or helping the forest. And so we work sort of on both ends, on the ground end, high level, of water end, and reach sort of a lot of different partners here. The community piece of SFI, basically making connections to help people understand the benefits of having sustainably managed forests. A lot of that work is done through our SFI implementation committees. We have 34 state or provincial and some regional SFI implementation committees throughout the US and Canada. That, a lot of these SFI implementation committees, through their logger training partners, collectively have, train over 10,000 loggers a year. This year, though, in 2020, that number will probably be closer to 8,000, just due to COVID and traditional training methods maybe not being as available. But over time, almost 220 some thousand. This slide is slightly old. Trained professional harvesters, again, through the entire SFI network, have been trained. And when SFI started, really 34% of basically all the loggers had sort of training. And today, and at least in 2019, over 96% have had logger training. So pretty big ramp up and work that SFI, the training partners, and the SFI implementation committees have done there. The company certified to SFI, we call program participants. also spend dues towards our towards these SICs, and have contributed over $75 million collectively to these networks.
That's a lot.
And that's
Gordy,
a lot.
We see that your slides maybe need to be shifted into presenter mode.
Oh, really?
Because we're seeing two screens. We see the next slide.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
So you can tell me what I'm going to talk about next.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I thought I was a mind reader, but I didn't want to.
No, you should have. You should just let me go and say, "Hey, Gordy, are you going to ever talk about?" And that's because I keep doing my screen instead of the actual PowerPoint. Bad on me. So I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. It's fine. It's going fine.
No, I know I'm good, but how's the presentation? How's it look now?
Good. Good.
You don't see what the next slide is going to be?
Not at all.
You don't? So I'm the only one that knows now what the next slide is going to be. That's awesome. Perfect. That's just the way I liked it. All right. Perfect. All right. Yeah, you can tell me anytime on that one. Let's see. Let's talk about specifically some logger training requirements. I've kind of highlighted the. Wait, how am I doing on time, Ignis? I have no idea. How much time do I have left?
You're doing good. You're doing good. It's only 7:15. So you got like another 15, 20 minutes if you want.
All right. That is going to be perfect. I have just a little bit more left, and then that's all I need. 15 minutes. We'll be good. Okay. Specifically some logger training requirements. But before I do, I also mention, I don't have any slides on this, but I'll also mention that SFI has also just recently undergone an SFI standard revision. So, we've enhanced really the training aspect, specifically logger training aspect in our new standard, but drilling down into sort of the actual requirements that forest management or the next slide, which you might have saw before, but that is going to be the next slide, is this fiber sourcing one of really the requirements that the mills or the forest management landowners are meeting by having you go through and sit through listening to me for an hour, or i.e. Completing some logger training requirements. So, and if for forest management, objective 11, training and education, again, they're fostering the improvement and professionalism of wood producers. There's a set list of criteria or topics that which are the same through forest management and fiber sourcing, that are sort of the training criteria. And I don't need to list that. They're fairly inclusive in my opinion. Similarly, fiber sourcing, again, this is that when you see that fiber sourcing logo, this is certification objective 6. Again, requires loggers to undergo training. And I don't want it just to be myself saying that, hey, there's been a lot of benefits from having logger training. We've got a lot of, I guess, accolades from other groups as well that'll just kind of highlight quickly. A study done on sort of this is from the pellet industry, and that was done a couple of years ago, kind of a highlight that into SFI's logger training from the fiber sourcing standpoint, who received training are more likely to implement BAP, as it's kind of like a no-brainer. Of course they are, because they've learned about them, but a global change biodiversity and bioenergy sort of paper written in 2007 highlights SFI and the loggers who have made that training. The National Association of State Foresters highlighted in their annual report about the contributions that loggers have made to practicing sustainable forestry and again around water quality. Also, the EPA has also recognized the role of forest certification, specifically logger training around the benefits that has provided around water quality. Next, just kind of on the community side, which is sort of the outdoor, get people outside piece of SFI. I think I just mentioned we have, 370 million now, so the slide's actually a hair old. But SFI also likes to highlight that of the land that's certified SFI, the vast majority of it is available for outdoor recreation. This, no, I don't think it matters, but last year in 2020, this was probably the most important slide I think SFI showed, because of people wanting to, that were quarantined or had to social distance. This became kind of the most important point that people realized from SFI certification. The fourth pillar, again, won't dwell on this a lot, but is our education piece. I spoke at sort of the intro around project learning tree, helping today's youth become really land stewards. We think it's very, very important just for, the right to practice forestry and training kids, not what to think, but sort of how to think about logging trees and really the environment. We've reached lots and lots of students, and by training the educators, I mentioned how to think, not what to think. Additionally, we have a similar program in Canada, but that's also now going to be a focus of PLT US. Is really green job placement, is helping companies hire loggers and or hire foresters or mill workers. SFI thinks green jobs is really all the jobs that work or touch or have something to do with forests. So I said I had 15 minutes. I didn't even need all of that, because that's going to conclude my presentation. I'm not sure if we have any questions, but I'll leave you with this crazy slide, but I'll stop there and to make sure I cover any questions that you might have for myself or Agnes.
Great, Gordy. That was real good. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Can you give us your email address again, just in case anybody wants to email you for anything?
Yeah. I had one more slide, which was this one.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah. Just in case somebody has any questions they want to ask you directly.
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to use it. I mean, I'll even accept a good logging joke, as Agnes mentioned. That's totally fair for me to email me with.
Great. So if anybody has any questions, they want to put them in the Q&A. I see one here. So has the new logger training standards been finalized?
Yes.
Somebody heard that maybe it's been proposed, but has it been adopted yet?
Yeah, it has been finalized. The new standard takes into effect at the beginning of next year, January 1, 2022. However, companies have the choice to we utilize 2022 as a transition year, and so companies can certify to the old standard, which is the 2015 to. It's called the 2015 to 2019, but it's technically the 2015 to 2022 standard. So a company has the option to still certify to the old standard in the year of 2022 if they so choose to. And that's where people sometimes get confused, is they'll say, well, I thought it was a new standard, and 2022 is a transition year. By 2023, everybody will be on the new standard requirements. And if I'll just speak really briefly on that, the new standard requirements, again, we made the list of topics, I think, more inclusive, allowing a little bit more flexibility for training programs that that Agnes thinks is important, and we certainly wanted to have that flexibility. And we also sort of tightened up, there was a little bit of discussion around what constitutes a QLP? Is that one guy per crew? Is it one forester that runs around to the job once a week or once a month? Or this is a harvest in Wisconsin on my land. That's what you're seeing in the background if you're viewing this on a computer. Or can it be in this case, the truck driver was trying to be the train guy, and we're like, no, we need to sort of, so we made a little bit tighter sort of ring around what constitutes a QLP, or qualified logging professional. That's what SFI determines as. In Maryland, it'd be the pro master logger, or the master logger. Virginia would be the sharp loggers, and sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, anyway, so we kind of tightened up those ropes. But what the language today in the SFI 2022 standard is done, it's final. What the language is exactly what it's going to be. So there's no temporary. What gets people confused is that transition period of really next year.
Great. Is there any other questions related to that specific topic? I have another question here. So, Gordy, can you please explain how, the Virginia Sharp Logger Program, the Ohio Logger Training Program, West Virginia Division of Forestry Logger Training, and the Maryland Delaware Master Logger Programs fit in required training requirements? Which states are the most difficult to complete? Are we easiest or most difficult, or right in the middle? How does the Mid-Atlantic kind of compare to the South or West?
As far as just logger training, or give me a little bit more context around that, Ignis, please.
I think the training requirements.
Oh, the training requirements. I mean, at the end of the day, the training requirements, at least from the SFI perspective, not taking sort of state law like West Virginia, I'll kind of take that out of the equation for a second. At the end of the day, the SFI requirements are the same across the board, period. Whether it's forest management or fiber sourcing, it's the same as it is in Georgia, as it is in Maine, as it is in Virginia, as it is anywhere. That's number one. So but when I say that, then the SICs have the ability to basically say how many credit hours our continuing education are going to be required each year. And that's on an SIC by SIC, or sometimes a training organization sort of decides that and the SIC adopts it. But one way or another, it's on a regional or statewide or provincial level if you're in Canada level, and it's not on an SFI Inc. level. So that's a local level issue that is decided locally. But I would say that the Mid-Atlantic region is probably, I would say, on par with what's required in sort of the Southeast, even the Lake states. Actually, probably some of the hardest ones, at least, and I'm really saying not hardest, but the most requirements are typically when they have Forest Practices Act law that they're also trying to meet with their logger training. So that would bring in the Oregon, Washington, California, West Virginia. Maybe, I think some of you folks are maybe here from West Virginia, but there as well. And then the state of Minnesota, and they don't necessarily have a law, but they just think that they should have lots of logger training. I like to tease. I don't think there's anybody from Minnesota in here, so I can totally tease them. But I think it's because they need that much training just to be comparable with the rest of the country. If this is being recorded, so if we can edit that part out, that'd be helpful. But anyway, so total. I would say, to answer the question directly, you're totally on par with 90% of what as far as credit hours and training requirements going. But the overall standard is again the same, but the SICs or training partners can up and down that depending on the needs and things that they might need to focus on more than in a different area.
So there's the standards, and then there's any sort of state law. So then meeting, if a state has the state laws and SFI requirements, then it just adds a level of complexity.
Yeah, so the state law says, you know what, if you're going to be a logger in my state and you're going to have BMP training, well, at the end of the day, SFI certification says, loggers that are going to go through, that are going to be considered a qualified logging professional, QLP, are going to go through BMP training. So they're the same. And so And so, a logger will go through sort of that BMP training. He'll be meeting sort of the state law requirement, but he also be meeting sort of the QLP status piece. And then the state law might say then loggers are required to go through, let's just make up a number, 10 hours of training a year. But, the SFI program says loggers will go through continuing education, period. We don't say how many hours that is, whether that's 1, 5, 100. And then, but then the loggers will say, okay, you know what, the SFI program is going to basically mirror what the state program is. And this is similar to what a Forest Practices Act type state would look like. Then I'm going to say, well, our SFI implementation committee and our training partner like AOL or Washington, anyway, whatever the Washington program is right now, I'm forgetting, Washington Contract Logger Association, they'll say, okay, listen, we're just going to require 10 hours a year. And that's not necessarily driven by SFI, but they're trying to mirror each other's up so that the loggers aren't doing duplicate work. They're going through a continuing education class, so like maybe something like this, and it's meeting sort of two requirements. One is certainly the QLP requirements, which also mirrors the Forest Practices Act requirement.
When you bring up an interesting point, like I think one of the greatest things about this Mid-Atlantic partnership between, Ohio, West Virginia, and Maryland is we already have memorandums of understanding with each other, just like we do with Pennsylvania, that if a logger takes a training in Virginia or Pennsylvania or Ohio or West Virginia, they can apply those credits. So like you're saying, in this case, also attending some of those trainings can overlap and help out. So that's really great that we're seeing other places to get credits that we don't necessarily have to do double duty on. So with our Mid-Atlantic, we have some core courses that are similar, but then we have some core courses that are state specific, and we need to take that specific core courses. But then after, when we get our continuing education credits, loggers can take classes from any state, as long as they send us the proof of attendance. So that's really great.
And I'll add to that, and that is specifically around BMPs, right? At the end of the day, Maryland's BMPs typically are different than sort of Pennsylvania's, or different than, some of the other states. And so that one, you almost have to get state specific, or in some areas out west, you can say regionally, but those areas, those, and that's fine to be different, but those almost need to be a state by state or a specific training, so that if the loggers working in the state of Maryland, they know the exact sort of BMPs to follow. But then continuing education, similar to what we're doing here today, can be broad and applies to, this would apply to anybody in the US or Canada, to be honest. So that can be more broad, and that's where reciprocity is important.
Yeah. And I like how you made sure that we're all following that we're all following the best management practices for our state. So that was a good reminder. But again, remembering we can take these continuing education credits. We got another question here about that SFI logo. When you see the SFI logo on a box of tissues, for example, does that mean the tissues are SFI certified, or does that mean that the box that they come in is SFI certified?
Great question. Actually, that's really a good question. So actually in both cases, whether it's fiber sourcing or chain of custody, it's both. So it actually has to be both. And so you can't sort of do one without the other. And I'm getting into sort of we have some trademark rules which go, I don't want to dive way deep into sort of what the companies or the mills have to do to meet certification, but when they put the logo in, there used to be a problem that, if you had a wood chair, but only the arm of the chair was SFI certified, and you just took a label on the whole chair, and the rest of it came from, Brazil and a bad forestry job, and this one arm came from good forestry. So actually, so the answer is it has to be both. And and typically it's kind of why you see the fiber sourcing logo a little bit more than you do the chain of custody logo, so that because companies might source products from a forest management, sort of the state of Maryland example. So if they're sourcing wood from that, that's going to go into the box, but the tissue, the actual stuff you're using to blow your nose in this case, is coming from sourcing, they kind of default to the lowest common denominator, which in this case is going to be fiber sourcing. So when you look around, you see all your logos, and you will see 90% of them as fiber sourcing, but the reason for that is because it has to be both in every case.
Okay, good question, good answer.
Mm-hmm.
We got another question here. Would a company fail an inspection if loggers were not fully trained qualified loggers? Would a company fail an inspection if loggers were not fully trained qualified loggers?
Yeah. So when you say inspection, you're really talking about an audit, a third-party audit. Every year that company is getting audited, whether it be forest management or fiber sourcing. And I wouldn't say fail, might be a stronger word. If they had the majority of their guys were not trained, then I would say fail, or they would get, in the auditing world, would be called a major corrective action. And then their certification, they got 90 days to fix it, or their certification is out. Then that has happened, unfortunately, and it happened around logger training. So that this is a kind of a true thing. But in most cases, it's going to be 1 or 2 guys or 3 guys that happen to get caught, and then they'll get a corrective action, and the company will be forced to say, hey, how are you going to prevent this from happening in the future? So fail might be too strong of a word unless it's a systemic sort of problem. Which again, unfortunately has happened. But in most cases, if it's 1 or 2 guys that don't have the training, the companies don't want them, whether to corrective action, because it's a bunch of work that they're going to have to type up and say, hey, how are we going to prevent it? They'll typically come back down to Ignis or the SIC to say, hey, you got to do a better job of making sure these folks are trained, because we got caught. But so I wouldn't say fail, but there will be follow up. And if it's big enough, the company could fail. And unfortunately, it has happened, and it was a bad deal.
Great. What I was thinking of, so you're gonna give somebody kind of like a warning to kind of get their act together before there's any sort of like serious action happening.
Yeah. If it's like 1 or 2 guys, it's kind of like a warning. The company's gonna have to write something up, but there might not be a warning if it's mass. If say that if I'm an auditor and I go to company X and I don't find a single guy that's been through training, that there's actually no warning. There's 2 kind of hard ones. Once, when you're getting initially certified, there's a heavy audit that we call a wide audit of looking at training. And then if they come back and find that, you just simply have missed training altogether, in an objective level, a high level, they give you basically 90 days to fix, or you're done.
Okay. So what if there was a logging company that had 5 loggers in it? Do all 5 of them have to be SFI trained?
No, basically there's today's new standard has sort of a risk assessment to say, basically 1 guy who has decision ability on that job needs to be trained, whether it's the processor operator, or the forwarder operator, or the skidder operator, whoever. It doesn't, I'm not going to say who needs to be trained here, but 1 person on that crew needs to be trained that has decision-making ability on that crew.
And that decision-making ability person that has the logger training, that's the person that cannot leave the site, right? Like they can't go get the coffee. They have to stay on site at all times. Is that how it is?
No, they can go get coffee or parts or something like that, but readily available on the site. So if the auditor showed up and he talked to Joe that said, hey, when's the last time Bill, who's your trained person, been on site? And he says 2 weeks. That's probably not going to fly. But if he said, yeah, he's here every day, make sure the job looks good, fixes this, or runs the forwarder for a little bit, that's gonna qualify all the time. And then today's standard, we can go a little bit further in depth, where the less riskier a job is, the less maybe the QLP person has to be on site. And so if it's I'll use the most mundane job I can think of, and a loblolly pine thinning. That's, every third row. Real simple job. No water within 100 miles. Pretty simple. There's not much risk of too much going wrong. As long as you can count to 3, you're probably going to do the job successfully. And I don't mean to offend anybody on that one at all, but it's just, those are fairly easy jobs compared to maybe a job that has 2 bridge crossings, an RMZ, and a northern hardwoods thinning that's marked. And so those 2 jobs are will set 2 different requirements. So that's this job that has 2 bridge crossings, whatever I just said, bridge crossings, some culverts, and some RMZs. That person, maybe can go for coffee, but not much more else. So that, there's we have this risk base. And then if the guys are cutting this loblolly pine thinning in Georgia that doesn't have water within 100 miles of it, and it's every third row thinning, that job might be, if the guys went for coffee, supper, then sat through a training the next day, that's probably going to fly okay, and not be in trouble.
Great. I didn't see any jokes, so maybe people will think about that for next month's seminar. And I realized at the beginning that I didn't actually introduce myself. So I introduced Gordy and I introduced our team, but I wanted to let everybody know my name's Agnes. I coordinate the Maryland Delaware Master Logger program. So this month I'm hosting, and next month I think I'm going to host again. But throughout this series, we're going to have Virginia hosting, West Virginia hosting, and Ohio hosting. So if you have any Maryland Delaware Master Logger questions, you can Google Maryland Delaware Master Logger program and find me there. Or you can give me a call, 410-310-8445, 410-310-8445. I'm happy to answer any questions Maryland Delaware Master Logger related. And Gordy, I see that we don't have any questions left to answer.
Really, if the person that asks the good question of, they're all good questions, but about the Kleenex in the box, if they want to send me their address, I will send them some SFI stuff for a really good question. Or if anybody wants to try to top that, I certainly will do that, because I'll send out some SFI stuff that I've had in my office way too long that I'd love to send to somebody. So if there's any other questions, I will send some stuff out if you're willing to. I think I showed did I get my email across? Did I send my email out? Or we can put it in the chat or something. But if they want to, whoever sent that question or asked that question, if they want to email me their address, I'll be more than happy to send it. Or if you had to ask a question, a good question to get that prize.
Or you could put it, you guys, so we can take a minute if you think of a good question, Gordy, maybe even if they put in a good joke. I like it how Gordy just,
yeah, I can do that. A good joke. Yeah, I can get some SFI stuff out. Let's see. Well, I'll show you what I can send here in a little bit if nothing else, the person who asked the Kleenex question, I thought that was really good. Certainly feel free to send me your directly the address or whatever, and I'll send some stuff out to you.
Gordy, that's very generous. You guys. This is great. So what I liked about this is we learned a little bit more about SFI, why we're doing what we're doing, especially me as the coordinator, helps me understand even to a deeper level of what we're doing here. I'm hoping that the loggers that are involved feel some pride, a little extra sense of pride with the work that they're doing, because you all are doing a great job. But this kind of gives you, can I say, bragging rights a little bit for when you do see that box of Kleenex?
Absolutely, definitely bragging rights. I mean, show your kids, your wife, that hey, I'm part of this. At the end of the day, this is because of me, and heck with the mill. I say because of you. So that's I absolutely. I say definitely bragging rights. And to be proud of it. I mean, at the end of the day, SFI certification is the only certification system that requires logger training. And without loggers, we wouldn't have those products, and without trained loggers, we wouldn't have those products, showing the sustainability of forest, the sustainability piece of the products that those logos are on, whether a coffee cup or a way too expensive 2x4. I think I've mentioned that 3 times, that
I don't know
how expensive boards are these days, but I can't do anything. It's terrible. I don't know if it's that way out there, but Wisconsin, it's really bad. I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing, but you can't build nothing here.
So in the chats, we were getting some thanks. Thanks for coming out and kicking us off. We got a message from Ohio, from Brad from Ohio. He's saying thanks for coming out and kicking off our training webinar series. We're excited. I don't, I'm speaking for the Mid-Atlantic training crew here about how excited we are for these next 7 months to see you once a month, and so you can get some training credits, some CEUs, and we're looking forward to having discussions and chats about the topics. And feel free to ask these questions. We're here to try and do our best to answer them for you. So with that, Gordy, thank you for coming out, Gordy, taking your time this evening. We appreciate all the loggers that are on the line.